So I have freshly returned from Hong Kong Disneyland, the first time in nearly 4 years that I've been there. Obviously, COVID halted a lot of international travel, and Hong Kong Disneyland, of probably all of the parks, between them and Shanghai, had the hardest time, where they opened and closed many times and had many restrictions. But they are back pretty much to normal operation, and being back to normal operation, they've managed to finally finish the construction on a expansion project that has been going on for a very, very long time, which included a number of other things, including a whole new castle, the Castle of Magical Dreams, and the Dreammaker statue of Walt and Mickey, among other things that they've done in this time. But the culmination of the expansion project is a brand new land just behind Fantasyland called the World of Frozen, which will forever have the distinction of being the first frozen land at any Disney park in the world. And that's an important distinction because there will be a lot of them. There are two more of them under construction already. And we'll talk about those a little bit because I want to talk about how things may be different or not so different in those other iterations, which will be the one at Disneyland Paris, which will be in the Walt Disney Studios Park and the back of the new lake, and the other, which will be part of a larger land, which is Fantasy Springs at Tokyo Disney Sea. But we'll talk about all that and more as I give you my honest review of the World of Frozen at Hong Kong Disneyland. So let's, first things first, we're going to talk about the star attraction is Frozen Ever After, which, as you probably know, first opened in 2016 at Epcot, and it replaced Maelstrom. And it's not a completely new attraction at Epcot, right? It uses the ride system, and it uses even the same boats from the Maelstrom attraction. And for the most part, 90% of its, well, actually all of its layout, they just changed the load and unload area, the way that works. Instead of having a separate unload area, they made it all one, and were able to add show scenes by doing so. So when it opened in 2016, I think it was really well received. It was the first Frozen ride in the world. It was kind of a rush to do it, right? Because Frozen came out in 2013, and they were ready to close Maelstrom by not even a year later. So pretty much the moment Frozen came out, they started dreaming up what a Frozen ride replacing Maelstrom would look like, and they got to work. And of course, Walt Disney Imagineering takes them some time to get these projects done, right? So that was the fall. It was October of 2014 that closed, and then in June of 2016, Frozen Ever After opened, and it was again very well received. A lot of high quality audio animatronics, and I know we're going to talk about the faces, don't worry about it. For the time, very high quality animatronics, really nice show sets. All in all, a really great update of Maelstrom, right? Look, I love Maelstrom, I love classic Epcot, which Maelstrom still is, even though it opened later, it opened in '88, 6 years after the rest of Epcot. It's still classic Epcot, right? It's a cultural world showcase attraction. But even for one of those, it was on the weird side. Guests were confused as to what it was. Was it all the marketing stuff showed a drop, so people were like, oh, it's a thrill ride. Oh, yeah. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see 45, 60-minute waits for Maelstrom. But what I felt was always the case was a lot of your more average Disney guests were disappointed. Like, they didn't know really what they got in line for. They were like, oh, big thrill ride. And it's a drop that's, it's I think, I don't know this off the top of my head. I think it's slightly taller drop than Pirates of the Caribbean. Maybe it's not. It feels like it, at least. And so I think people expected a big thrill ride, and then it was kind of just like a moderate, mild thrill ride. And then beyond that, they didn't completely understand what was going on in it, right? There's this weird mural with, the cruise directors and oil rig workers and children with fish, and but then there's trolls, and then there's Vikings, and then there's trolls again, and then oil rigs, and it's all, look, it was strange and wonderful as a Disney fan, but I think for an average guest, it may have not tested very well. It may have not been their favorite thing they did at Epcot, or even in the conversation for their favorite thing they did at Epcot, right? And Maelstrom was not a remarkable thing. It had a fairly small footprint, and they made the most of that footprint. Like the switch track thing where the boat goes backwards was cool, right? Undoubtedly, but that was because they had a very confined space to work with. They realized, like, oh, if you send the boat along and then you do this thing where it slides over, we don't have to build a whole turn for the boat. And also, it's a cool novelty, right? It makes it different from a lot of our other boat rides. So it killed two birds with one stone, right? It made it interesting, and it also helped them to save space. It's not a huge footprint for this ride. And so I think when Frozen Ever After opened, I think it was a really effective use of the space they had, combining the load and the unload. I think they did a great job with the queue. The interior queue is gorgeous. They did a really nice job with that. The show scenes are great. And I really like the animatronics, other than the screen faces, right? Olaf was really cool. I think some of the screen faces work, right? And that's why they kept those in the version we're going to talk about. The trolls, right? The trolls, because of the lighting in that room and also what their faces are, they're basically faces on rocks. They work really well. They're pretty convincing. And same with, I'm not against screen faces in total. I think the Seven Dwarfs, I think on Mine Train, I think they look great. I think the lighting in that scene and the way it's done it's one of my favorite show scenes they've ever done anywhere, that one on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So it can work. Does it work when you have characters that are more shaped like a normal human, and you're going to see, like the dwarves have beards, right? And so you could hide the seam between, the faux skin and the screen face. You could hide that with where the beard is, right? Anna and Elsa and Kristoff do not have beards, and so it was weird, especially the end scene. You'd always pass right by that scene with Elsa's face, and it always looked weird. And the lighting in that room was not great for the effect. So they were great figures. They just didn't finish the job because what they had found at that time was the screen faces worked really well. They allowed the figures to really be expressive. And I know people go on and on, it's a cost thing. I don't think the cost was terribly different at the time. I really think it was they thought it would look better. The characters would look more like themselves. And given what they had done so far think about the string of animatronics that leads to Frozen Ever After, right? If we look at that like 5-year period leading up, right? You look at, Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid had a little bit of it, right? Because they had the Sebastian with the screen eyes, and that worked really well for Sebastian. And so doing Olaf with the screen eyes makes a lot of sense. But then we look at Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. That was really effective. They looked great, and so why not continue that trend, right? Why not keep doing it if it's working? And the other one, this is a weird one, but Radiator Springs Racers did that a lot too. I mean, a lot of Lightning McQueen is projected. The mouth is projected where his mouth would be, and then the eyes are screen eyes, again in similar vein to Olaf or Sebastian, but obviously their eyes are much bigger because it's the whole front windshield. So they had a lot of success doing this and making characters expressive, and I think that's why they went. I don't think it was a money thing, but in hindsight, like I'm sure it's a decision they wish they could have back, at least Imagineering. I don't know if Walt Disney World cares, because it's going to be interesting to watch how long it takes for them to move forward with the updates that were made for the new version of Frozen Ever After. It'll be interesting to see if they ever decide to do that, and if and when that will be. But and that's the weird thing is that's the part everyone's stuck on, but there's so much more going on in World of Frozen as far as Frozen Ever After is concerned, with that upgrade the ride and take it beyond what I think is a very good D ticket and put it into e-ticket territory. I think it makes it, especially for Hong Kong, for that audience, it may sound crazy for people, but it's really, for them, it's an e-ticket. Because the franchise is loved so much. This is a very good ride with really big quality scenes, great quality animatronics, a thrilling drop at the end, which for an American audience is not wildly thrilling, but the rest of the world, they have different thrill preferences, right? And in Asia, I will say a lot of rides that we consider to be more tame are very intense. So that drop is a big deal for a lot of the Asian market. For whatever reason, people are very thrilled by that drop, and as opposed to in Walt Disney World, where I think a lot of American guests would just be like, "Oh, that was fun," as opposed to in Hong Kong, where people are screaming wildly on the drop. Part of that is cultural, because people are a little more reserved in their daily life, and the theme parks are a place where you can kind of let loose a little bit. It's definitely true of Japan. I'm sure it's somewhat true for the Hong Kong market too. But it's definitely, for them, it's a higher thrill level for a lot of that market. It's just a cultural difference. So yeah, but I think they've elevated, beyond the animatronics, they've elevated things. But the animatronics in the new Frozen Ever After are fantastic, right? And the moment I saw the first one, I got those Tokyo Disney vibes, right? You know, operated by the Arendelle Land Company, essentially licensed from Disney. It's well known at this point that Tokyo Disney will spend the money and take things to the next level, right? And I got those vibes that I got from Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, which we have an honest review of on this channel. You can watch already of that ride and that whole Fantasyland expansion for Tokyo Disneyland from a couple of years ago. But I got the similar vibe of those really impressive animatronics that were built for that. They are of a very similar vein, and they're these all-electric figures, right? They're of this new modern generation where they're building these all-electric figures like Iron Man at the Flight Force attraction in Paris, but more akin to what you're seeing at Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, and what you will see far and wide when Fantasy Springs opens next year at Disney Sea, where it's the characters you know and love with these very expressive physical faces. But beyond that, it does really add something to the ride, right? I didn't have a distinct problem with the projection faces in 2016, but projection technology ages rapidly. Any sort of screen-based technology or projection-based technology is always going to age much faster than physical, right? Because there's an artistry, there's more of an artistry, I think, to the physical. You know, like Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion, those things, a majority of those rides remain timeless because they are works of art. And so that's timeless to people. It's physically there. It's not, you know, like if you look at but to bring Haunted Mansion into the conversation, if we look at the bride scene, right, the Constance bride scene, which Disneyland I think was 2005 and Florida Magic Kingdom was 2007, that looked great at the time. That has not aged well, right? Like projection technology has come so far that what was a really cool effect, you know, 20 years ago is now like, it's long in the tooth, and I'm kind of sitting here waiting like, well, with Hatbox Ghost going in, you know, it might be time to revisit the bride scene and give that an upgrade or put something new there. And the same will be for Frozen Ever After, right? As the years have gone on, just a couple years later, I think those projection faces they're reaching the point where they're getting a little long in the tooth, and they're starting to look a little dated. And so it's good, I think, you know, spend the money on these physical faces, do the upgrades, and you make them timeless. These are timeless representations of these characters because they're so well done. But beyond that, what elevates the ride to an e-ticket stature is not only culture, not only where it is, but also a number of other changes. It's a gorgeous facade. You enter under the clock tower in Arendelle. You're in the town. And the queue goes on forever, and it's all these really beautiful rooms. And what's interesting is so there were a lot of really good ideas. Again, I'm not going to sell the original Frozen Ever After short. There's no reason to. They did a great job. And the queue is part of that. The official ice, Ice Master and Deliverer, which is Kristoff and Sven, they have like a little office essentially at the beginning of the Frozen Ever After queue in Florida. What they've done here is taken the Florida queue, broken it up a bit, and expanded upon it. So that Ice Master and Deliverer area is a much larger section of the queue. There's more propping. There's some really cute, there's a really cute little window with ice and a carrot for Sven. But it's way more detailed and way bigger. But then also you keep like the outdoor portion, right? There's that courtyard portion of the queue in Florida. There is a portion of the queue later on in the Hong Kong one, where it is a courtyard. It's very different, but you are walking alongside a building that you will eventually enter, right? The other one, the one in Florida, is much more open air, and eventually there's like a little building on the dock you pass through to load and then you leave. But the Hong Kong one is really impressive because you're walking. It's like you're outdoors next to this. You're adjacent to this building you're eventually going to go into. Of course, the whole time you're inside already. But you're walking around this courtyard, and then you hook around the corner, and you're inside the building you were just looking at from the outside, and you travel through there for a bit before you get to the load station. But the other thing is that the scenes are so much bigger and they feel more complete, again, because you got to build this from scratch. Because you got to build this from scratch, there were a lot of things you got to do that you could not do with the Maelstrom building. And you let some scenes breathe a little more. Don't get me wrong, some scenes are nearly identical, but all of them seem plussed. They all feel plussed in some way, shape, or form. The load area that's where really it shines, because they had so much more room to work with here. It's this really big load area, and there's this big castle-like building off to the side that you travel past as you enter the rockwork and turn the corner into the Olaf and Sven scene. It's just really pretty, very well done. But then I'm really impressed by how much they worked on the layout, right? They decided to mirror the attraction in a lot of ways. So Olaf and Sven are on the left side rather than the right side. And they laid them out in a way where I think more of the boat can see them for a longer period of time. I don't know this for sure, but I think the Olaf figure is essentially different from the one they built for Florida. It feels different to me. But maybe, again, because it's all electric, it had to be fairly different. They've changed the way they do these, and that's really great. And then the troll scene is heavily plussed as well. Again, I feel like it's laid out better. It's easier to see. But then also on the other side of the track where the trolls aren't, there's more going on. There's these projections. There's these openings in the rockwork and projections where the heat is coming out of the vents in the ground. Very similar to what happens when Kristoff and Anna head to meet the love experts in the first film. And she gets warmed up by one of these, heat vents in the ground. So that's there, and they've spread out the scene a little bit. You're able to move the younger troll that pops up and says, "Oh, you're going to the Ice Palace, lucky," and that's on the other side. And you give it time to breathe. There's a little more space between the Grandpappy portion of that scene and this little troll popping out on the other side now. It's nice to let that breathe. The most jarring thing for me, though, is the lift hill. So because you're building a ride from 35 years ago now, they're obviously building a very different ride system, right? The boats are different. These are not the Maelstrom boats. They're wider. They have better capacity. They're super comfortable, even though they have like little seats that are etched out, so you know how many people are supposed to fit in a row. And even as I'm American and larger than most people visiting that park, and definitely larger than most people from Asia who are visiting that park, I, even packed into a full row, felt very comfortable and felt like I had enough room. And the boats also they're pretty. They're nice vehicles. But the lift hill, I have never seen a lift hill mechanism like this, and I have a lot of theme park experience, I would say. I don't know how, obviously it's going to be more efficient, and it's definitely less bumpy than the really old lift hill in Florida. It's still a little bumpy, though. I think that's just the nature of such mechanisms. And it's also still loud. So, an interesting choice. I'm intrigued as to why creatively no one tried to make the changes. So tell some Disney history. Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland needed, in order to get out to the show building beyond the berm, needed to go down 2 drops to get out there, but then they had to get you back, and the only answer was to send you up a waterfall, which Walt Disney sold really well on television, but it wasn't a thing that Imagineers really liked about the ride. Mark Davis in particular, who's sort of the father of Pirates of the Caribbean, didn't like that. And so when they built the Walt Disney World one, he's like, you're not going up the lift hill. We're not doing that. That's not going to happen. obviously Maelstrom existed, and it was what it was, and they explained it well enough. It was sort of this weird mystical thing when you went up the lift hill and there's this glowing eye in the wall. And so it wasn't jarring. It's something magical's happening. And I'm sure their whole conceit with the Frozen one is that Elsa's inviting you to the Ice Palace, and so she's using her icy powers to, you see all the snow on the projections on the walls going upward towards the North Mountain and her Ice Palace. And so I'm sure it's some conceit where it's like that same power is drawing your boat up the side of the mountain as well. But I just think the fact that they're like, yeah, we'll still do a lift hill, it's fine. And they didn't just decide to start the ride on a different level and maybe exit you at a different level instead of having the lift hill present. But I'm nitpicking at that point. I don't think it really hurts the attraction. And plus, having a vertical travel scene to the Ice Palace works. I think it builds anticipation for what's to come when you actually get there. Other than the non-projection faces, the next scenes are very similar. But they took there were a lot of chances to do different things, little pluses. And one of those is the doors that go to Elsa's scene in the Ice Palace. They have projection mapping on the door where there's a snowflake and it vanishes when the door swings open to that scene. There's also, to my knowledge, there are a lot more mechanisms in this version. So there are some wheels in the water here that can really control the speed of getting you up to the Elsa scene and getting you to the switch that moves to the side and sends you backwards. Also, some lighting effect changes, right? So what is an homage to Maelstrom, but also something that didn't need to be fixed, was when the three-headed troll would cast the spell and send you backwards, there was a fiber optic effect above you in the ceiling. They kept a majority of that, and that became Elsa's sort of icy magic, sending you backwards when she starts to sing Let It Go. That's still in the ceiling at Frozen Ever After in Florida. Obviously, they're building this new one from scratch. So it looks like, I'm not a lighting expert. I think it's a very pretty, I think it's like an LED display. It's kind of like, almost like a scoreboard at a major sports arena. It's that kind of technology, but they're using it to make it look like the icy magic on the ceiling. It's definitely very different from fiber optics. Someone more knowledgeable can let me know in the comments what that technology actually is, what kind of screen panel or lighting panels those are. Not my area of expertise. But also, like, they took the time, they redid the projections. Like, the animation is definitely way more crisp and cleaner, and it's been several years, and so I'm glad it wasn't just, oh, we're just going to reuse whatever we did in 2016 for the attraction. Like, it's clear that they took another stab at the animation and the projections, right? So when Elsa, when she's gone from view, you started going backwards and she's gone from view, and you see her reflecting in the icy fractals in the wall. It's clearly a much nicer piece of animation and in much higher resolution. And it's nice to see that they took the time to do that. The other thing that's going to be jarring if you're coming from the Disney World version is these new modern track switches are super fast. So you get up to Elsa and it is whoop, like they throw you to the other side of the room and then let you go backwards down the little backwards drop and out of the palace. Again, changing the layout a little bit, things on different sides, not just mirrored, but conscious decisions to lay the ride out a little different. But still, for the most part, it's all the Maelstrom layout. Just some things are pushed to a different side in some cases. And so I love what I think makes attractions like Pirates of the Caribbean great. Is it's a long attraction and things get time to breathe. Now, we're not doing that. This isn't a 10 to 15 minute boat attraction, right? Frozen Ever After is not that long. But I like that we get a couple minutes for things to breathe. So Let It Go ends and the doors close and you're going through the cavern and there's mist. And you get some time to just enjoy the atmosphere of the scene. You get some time for the scene to breathe where you have this rock work and you see shooting stars going across the sky, the Aurora Borealis, all of this happening. There's a snow gi or two popping out. all this before you finally get to the back of the room and switch track in front of Marshmallow and the Ice Palace and go down the drop, which that seems mostly the same. I've heard people say the drop is bigger. A lot of people who've been on the Florida one who went out for the media event and such, I've heard them say that. I don't know if Disney confirmed that or not. It doesn't feel like a bigger drop. There are times it felt rougher. There are times where it felt like perhaps the drop was the same height but at a steeper angle. So I think like perhaps if the Epcot one is like this, maybe the Hong Kong one is a little bit steeper, but not necessarily taller. Because we hit the bottom, sometimes it felt like we were hitting, and it was a little rough sometimes, and it was jarring people for sure. But otherwise, mostly the same. And you go past the Ice Palace with the projections on it, and they built out a lot more of the little village houses, and it starts as a mural, and they come into full or bigger size, and they're physically there. It's a very pretty scene, and then you go through the doors to the final scene, which is Anna and Elsa now without projection faces, with again what feels like a very much upgraded Olaf animatronic doing the In Summer number. And this scene is captivating. I will say, like with the physical faces, this scene is way more captivating, and you can't help but sit and watch it. And every once in a while, you get lucky enough that the boats are backed up a little bit, that you'll actually stop there and watch for a moment. And it's nice to see the characters so expressive. These are great figures. It's nice to see Anna and Elsa really coming to life and reacting to what Olaf is saying, right? And when they lean forward and say "Happy Snowman" and he gets excited, you can't help but get caught up in that. And I think for younger audience, it'll really feel like they've gone into their favorite movie. And I think for those of us who are older, I think we'll just be really enamored with the quality and level of detail and how real the characters feel against their cartoon screen counterparts. But all in all, again, between the queue, the fixes to the ride itself, the exit, between all of that extra detail and extra spacing and all the corrections in the layout and making the scenes a little bigger and a little more detailed, I think that it crosses the line where it takes us from something that is very much a D ticket, a very worthwhile attraction, but still a D ticket at Epcot, and makes it is a headline draw for Hong Kong Disneyland, which, believe it or not, is a feat, because in their last expansion, I think Hong Kong built two of the best attractions at any Disney park in the world. And to their credit, two of the very last original attractions at any Disney park in the world that proved that in the modern era, Disney could still do great original storytelling in the parks. And I hope they get the chance to again, because Big Grizzly Mountain, Runaway Mine Cars, and Mystic Manor are top-notch. Grizzly is super fun, really tremendous, full of animatronics, and really creative story and layout, and just so different. Taking the Everest ride system and making it into something way more playful and fun and less like super mega thrill and more family fun, but something that's fun for, I think, anyone of any age. And then Mystic Manor is just, I think, the greatest Disney attraction currently available in the world. I think it is untouchable. It just feels like Pirates and Mansion. It feels like that level of detail and storytelling, and it's just so endearing. It is sort of the modern incarnation of what I think is the best attraction Disney's ever done, the original Journey to Imagination. But so much of that formula is there, right? Original characters. There's this older guy who's sort of the guide, and then a mischievous, childlike, fun secondary character, which is Figment in Journey to Imagination, but is Albert the Monkey in Mystic Manor. But that's what Frozen's in a park up against those, and it is, I think it's the third headliner for them. Right, I think the Marvel things fell a little short. The Iron Man experience it's a fine take on Star Tours with Iron Man. I think story-wise they could have come up with something a little more interesting. It's usually my problem with the Marvel stuff they've done so far. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle is very screen heavy and very flat, and just it's just okay. So it's nice to see, following the Marvel stuff, it's nice to see sort of return to the level of quality and care and and expenditure that they spent on Grizzly and Mystic. To see that again, even if it is IP in Frozen, it's nice to see. So getting away from Frozen Ever After, we're on we're in town in Arendelle on this side, and it's a gorgeous land. It is gorgeous, and it helps it that it is in the most gorgeous setting of any Disney park in the world. There is no Disney park on earth that has a greater benefit of location than Hong Kong. And I know, like Disney World, we have the size, but let's face it, you know, other than the natural beauty you see of going out into like if you go to like Fort Wilderness and you go see what the natural beauty of the wetlands and the marshes here in Florida is, that's kind of all we have going for us. And in Disney World's case, you can't really use that very much to benefit a surrounding land, right? Usually, same with Disneyland, they usually have to find all sorts of foliage from different places and put that in place to try to make you feel like you've gone somewhere in particular. And they can't use so much of the real natural environment. There's been a few times, very few times where in Disney World that's happened. In particular, this is not a terribly important land in the grand history of Disney parks, but Camp Minnie Mickey, which used to exist in Animal Kingdom, had a lot of that, right? Because it was just this rustic sort of, supposed to be in the Adirondacks. That's the area you're supposed to be in. And a lot of the Florida greenery worked for that. It was convincing. But generally, the Florida nature doesn't tie into the land so much because it doesn't really tell the story of whatever Disney's building. In the case of Frozen and Arendelle, if you watch those movies, Arendelle is on the water. It's a port town, and it's up against, you know, in somewhere in the area of Norway. We don't know exactly where in that region Arendelle is, but it's up against, you know, it's on the fjord and it's up against these giant mountains. Hong Kong Disneyland happens to have this incredible backdrop of these rolling green mountains. It's so picturesque and beautiful. It works so well. Their Toy Story Land attraction-wise is nothing to write home about, but the Toy Story Land, the scale of all that stuff up against the mountains has always made that my favorite Toy Story Land. Even if I don't go on the rides in it, at least visually, I'm like, I do feel like I've shrunken down because look, these giant mountains are in the background. How do you not? In the case of Arendelle, these real-life rolling hills, these mountains in the background behind, you know, the castle, and then especially blending into the man-made rockwork of Wandering Oaken sliding sleighs on the other side, the forest side. This whole vista of the clock tower with the North Mountain and the Ice Palace, and then the castle in Arendelle, and then the fjord, the waterway they built, and then the real mountains in between and above, and that rolling into the faux rockwork of the Sliding Sleighs roller coaster. It is one of the most beautiful settings of any land in any Disney park. It's incredible. They used it so much to their advantage. And Disneyland Paris is not going to have this, right? And Disneyland Paris is essentially going to have the left side of this land, which is the town, the Arendelle town, right? That's all Paris is going to have, and they're not going to have anything on the other side. So there's no backdrop with these real natural mountains. There's no other side of this land where Sliding Sleighs and the forest is. That's just not going to be there along the waterway. So you're getting a very truncated version of the land, which loses that backdrop. And I think, like, look, it's going to be great for that park. Walt Disney Studios Paris is most likely the worst Disney park ever built. And a majority of the front of that park, a majority of the existing portion of that park is very ugly. It is not pretty to look at, right? And they had moments later where obviously the Ratatouille area is very, very pretty. That's nice. It's going to be nice to have something else that's that quality and probably even a couple steps above that. And this particular version, look, I've been harsh on them building Frozen Ever After again, but they took it to another level and I think elevated enough to where it does legitimately feel like a newer Disney attraction than something opened in 2016. And the level of theme and quality that's gone into the bigger queue and bigger scenes makes it feel like a genuine e-ticket. And I think, again, for the Paris audience, it's going to be a very similar draw to what it is in Hong Kong. And so that ride undoubtedly, and even this little village, will be a tremendous addition, but it's going to be missing a couple little elements that push the Hong Kong one over the edge, right? Because other than Frozen Ever After and the big backdrop, there's only, like, everything's very good, but there's nothing that makes this, we're not putting World of Frozen in the same conversation as Cars Land. We're not putting World of Frozen in the same conversation as Pandora, the World of Avatar. We're not going to put World of Frozen in the same conversation as most of the ports at Disney Sea. That's not going to happen. But it is a really pretty and very well done themed land. It's somewhere in between, right? It's just one notch below those lands I just mentioned, but still way above, like, Toy Story Land at Hollywood Studios or anywhere else it exists for that matter. It's still above that. It's still way above either of the Avengers campus lands, as you would imagine, because those are, I think both of those are hideous and terrible, but nonetheless. But let's talk about the town a little bit more. The town consists, there's not a whole lot going on. Even though it looks like there's several buildings in classic Disney fashion, there's one or two establishments, and they cover, they go inside, they cover essentially several of the exterior facades, right? So sweeping across, there's some sort of boat building. There's the Arendelle Press. I forget the exact name. You'll see it in the video, though. And there's the cartographer office, and in between all that is the entrance of the Golden Crocus Inn. But the Golden Crocus Inn and its seating areas take up that whole string of buildings. The Golden Crocus, of course, is the flower that's on the Arendellian flag, and that's what the restaurant is named for. And this is it's a brilliant interior. I love the ordering area. There's the kitten with mittens from one of the Frozen shorts. Super cute, and even he or she has their own dedicated speaker where every once in a while you'll hear some meows, which makes everyone look up and back from the ordering area and realize that there's a kitten in a sweater looking down at us. And then on the opposite side, there's all these great portraits. There's Anna and Elsa, it's a great photo op, these portraits of them, and some other royal portraits of Olaf and Sven and Kristoff and other characters. And there's some more of those on the left side of the building. There's the Knock and some other characters from Frozen 2 making it on that side. And then on the left side of the building, the right side of the building is the cartographer, which they did some original map art for Arendelle, which is all very, very nice. Overall, it's a really pleasant interior. I like it. The one big negative I have, this is the one thing I'm going to say about this land that I don't like and I think was a misjudgment. And I'm sure there's some reason why, if it was a space thing or they were worried they couldn't handle it operationally, it'd be too popular, whatever the case may be. You can't actually go to the castle, right? So the Ice Palace is very small and it's up on a mountain, right? And using forced perspective, it looks like it's far away. So you don't expect to go there, but Frozen Ever After takes you to the Ice Palace anyway. But as for the actual castle in Arendelle, I think a lot of people had the expectation they were going to go in there. And at Disney Sea, you will. At Disney Sea, they are building that at a bigger scale, and you get to go in there. But in Paris and Hong Kong, you do not. In Paris and Hong Kong, they've sort of hidden the entrance, the bridge. You'll know that bridge that leads up to the castle in the movie. They show it several times. There's scenes that take place on it. That long bridge that goes to the castle is off to the side and pushed sort of behind the store facade, which is attached to Frozen Ever After, to make it inaccessible to guests. So the castle is this faraway thing that is just a photo opportunity and not something you can go up to take a photo with. It's only something you could photograph essentially from the harbor. I think this is a big mistake. I think it should have been something you could walk up to and take photos with. And I think it should be a dining venue. I really think there should be, I think a sit-down meal with characters inside the castle in Arendelle makes too much sense. And for whatever reason, Paris and Hong Kong have decided they didn't want or need this, or WDI decided to not offer it. I don't really know what the story is. Like, Golden Crocus is a great counter service, and you'll see we're going to release a video with all the food reviews. I ate everything in the land, and it's a cute interior. But there's very clearly something missing, and it's the opportunity to walk up to this castle and take closer photos with it. You know, the same way you walk up to the castle in the middle of the park. you know, you don't get that moment, and you get it in a lot of other places, right? The Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, which they just built in Tokyo, the queue goes through and in, right? And you get that moment on the bridge in the queue to take your photo with the castle close up. And then, you know, Little Mermaid, the Little Mermaid ride at Magic Kingdom, you go, the queue goes near Prince Eric's castle and close enough to where you can get a great photo with it. To not have that opportunity in Arendelle, I think, was a misjudgment. They still did a very nice job. It's laid out, it's very pretty. It offers this big, you know, this big wide vista is gorgeous. But the inability to go up and get the close-up shot to get closer to the castle icon seems like a misjudgment. And I think an even greater misjudgment to not have the table service. But maybe, you know, I will tell you, table service dining is not the hot commodity it is at Disney World or Disneyland at a lot of the international parks. So maybe they decided they didn't want or need that, right? You know, Walt Disney Studios Paris does not have a lot of table service, and I don't think they really want more. I mean, they are building one on the lake, but that'll only be number 3, and maybe they've deemed that's enough. And same for the Hong Kong park. There's not a whole lot of table service in that park either, but what I think is wild is in the post-COVID era, they turned the Explorers Club, which is the counter service restaurant next to Mystic Manor in Mystic Point, they made that a sit-down buffet, semi-buffet, where you order an entree, but then there's also a buffet to go up to. The fact that they felt they needed that but didn't want to build a buffet restaurant in the castle in Arendelle, I think was a weird choice. I don't know, maybe they regret it now, but that's the one thing that really bothered me about the land. That's my one thing I'm gonna be negative on. Otherwise, so you have the Golden Crocus is that whole left side, and the right side is to the right side of Frozen Ever After. That small building is Tock Toys and Collectibles, which is the store. And I said the store because there's one, and it's not very big, and it's at the exit of Frozen Ever After, and it was a disaster the entire time we were there. Now, I know it's all new merchandise, and especially at the Asian parks, people love to bring something home. They love to buy stuff. It's why that audience resonates with me a lot. I love my souvenirs as much as the next person, but really very passionate about collecting. And the store, I think maybe it's too small, and I think it was a mistake to put it at the exit of Frozen Ever After. I think if you're visiting that land, Frozen is very popular. I think you're going to shop anyway. I don't think the shop needed to be at the exit of Frozen Ever After. I think it could have been a standalone thing, and I think they built it too small. I think they J.K. Rowling did, right? That's always been the problem of the Harry Potter lands at Universal is those interiors are just way too small. And then rides exit into them. The one in Diagon Alley that it's always a disaster, always. And I'm sure Universal fought with her 100 times, knowing it needed to be bigger, but they didn't make it bigger. She wanted it to be small. She felt like that was right, but it's a theme park. It has to operate, has to function. And look, this land, the World of Frozen is not huge. It's not a giant land. It's not that big. In Hong Kong Disneyland, on that particular side, as far as expansion space back there was only so much room. So, but that's where they put the store. That's where they chose to have it. It's a cute little shop, but I think putting it at the exit was a bit of a mistake. Just in front of that, there's an exterior seating area, which they do use for outdoor seating for Golden Crocus, but it can just be a place for people to relax on a less busy day when they don't commandeer it, essentially, for Golden Crocus. And then there's a separation. If you work your way down the left side of the land, there's a separation between that series of buildings that are Golden Crocus Inn and Northern Delights, which is the sweet shop. And in between there's an access gate and also restrooms. One of my favorite little references in the land is next to the restroom. There is a fertilizer, a barrel for fertilizer, and it's Southern Isles fertilizer, and it basically is the silhouette of Hans, who, you know, that's the punishment he eventually receives when he goes back to his brothers after, you know. I think that's not a bad punishment after you try to, like, murder a bunch of people. If all it is like, yeah, you have to go work in the stable and shovel horse manure. It could probably be much worse than that, right? You could be locked up or you know, maybe back in that time, sentenced to death, right? So he did okay. Certainly could have been worse for him. But we got to reference that in this barrel, which is next to the restrooms, which I think is pretty fun. There's also a crate elsewhere. There's a reference to Weaseltown, or Wesselton, whatever you'd like to call it, their former trade partner. So you see some goods from Wesselton are still laying around. One of my favorite little hidden things in the land, though, is not really hidden, but the icon of TikTok Toys and Collectibles on the exterior, and inside there is this toy soldier with one leg. So the toy soldier with one leg is a Disney character. It's from Fantasia 2000, and it's a story based on a Hans Christian Andersen story. And of course, you know this, another Disney story inspired by Hans Christian Andersen is Frozen, the Snow Queen. And so they took the opportunity to take another one of the things that he inspired them to create and reference it in the toy store with the one-legged toy soldier. And I'm a big Fantasia stan, so I was very excited to see that. It's all very cute. As for Northern Delights, it's a very cute little shot. The facade is really pretty. All the facades are. It's a gorgeous land in total. And they have a really nice, again, go watch the food review. I won't get too much into the snacks, but some really creative and thoughtful things that feel right. The food and beverage team did a great job with everything, but particular highlights, the donuts, which they call, I might butcher this, smultringer is Norwegian, is the Norwegian name for this dish, but essentially it's 2 jelly-filled donuts. And on a stick, they're fantastic. They take a very cute photo. There's a melting Olaf ice cream cone, some really cute stuff. But the candy store, sweet shop in general, is very cute. And what I thought was a really cool corporate alliance thing, Godiva, they have an agreement with Godiva, so there is a number of World of Frozen branded Godiva products in there, all sorts of special boxes and things you could take home. In Asia, it's an expectation if you go on vacation, especially go to a Disney park, you bring people back usually a gift which will be sweets or some sort of snack, right? So and if you go to Tokyo Disney, there are whole stores dedicated to these snacks and chocolates and things like that you can bring home for people, to give to people from your trip. And so that's what's happening here is they have a whole store of that, and it's a majority of it is Godiva branded chocolate with World of Frozen specialty packaging, and it's all very cute. And I like it a lot. Then you move out towards the forest. There is this one little winding path off to the right where there's a little sign warning you about trolls. And there's a photo op area where there are trolls in rock form that occasionally will speak. And in the background is a little statue of Bruni, the little lizard from Frozen 2. He's hanging out back there in statue form. There's a couple more of them in the land. I won't spoil where all of them are. But I like this surprise and delight of the speaker going off every once in a while, because people will be taking their Bruni photo and then they'll hear something speaking from the trees, and they'll realize like, oh, it's the trolls, because it's the trolls. Some people are sitting on them because they look like a place to sit, but it's a cute little surprise and delight moment. So they didn't build any formal meet and greet space. So from time to time, this becomes a space where characters appear. In the Asian parks, they're way more in demand. People love to take photos, and they love to take photos of and with characters. And so the demand for meet and greets would be considerably higher than it even is in the US if they had these characters in formal meet and greets. So they chose not to do that. So the characters will essentially walk around the land. They'll try to roam as much as they can. People only let that happen to an extent before they're mobbed. And so you'll see in some of our video content that in particular we have Elsa, and she's just mobbed, but she'll try to walk around the land and show people different little areas and interact with the kids and have a moment with them. Mossy, the baby troll, the little interactive puppeted character, will often appear in the space, but they'll also roam through the land as well. Wandering Oaken and Kristoff and Anna are around as well. Mossy, the baby troll, is everything we want, right? It's what we all complained about with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, was the land didn't feel alive because people didn't live in it. Like, yeah, the cast members did a lot of the legwork by being the citizens of Batuu and Black Spire Outpost, right? They were all well versed in the story, and they spoke in character and continued that story, but without aliens and droids to round out that experience and more characters, the land doesn't feel truly alive. In Arendelle, right, they've done the same thing. Hong Kong Disneyland has tremendous cast members to begin with, but so many of them really, they're really immersing guests in the land. They same way like a cast member in Galaxy's Edge will speak in story and in character. The Arendellian cast members will do the same here. But they're very well complemented by the entertainment. There's a bunch of wandering characters. There's this baby troll. There's a lot that furthers the immersion to the point at which it feels like you've really gone to Arendelle. And Mossy the baby troll is one of those things. And it just is such a thoughtful, fun, endearing little act. But there's a lot more atmospheric entertainment too, which is a thing we don't do a lot of in the US. It's the first thing we look to cut from these projects. There is a band that performs. They're super talented, and they perform a number of the songs from Frozen in instrumental form. And it's very charming and worth watching, and adds a lot of life to the land. And speaking of music, the background music loop for the land is spectacular, right? And look, it's hard to fail with background music when you have Frozen to work with, right? You have two movies and even the shorts, which all have this really memorable and beloved music, and it's all used perfectly. The opening song from Frozen 1, I think it's called Frozen Heart. I don't know. The one where they're breaking the ice and packing it up and such. There is a really incredible rendition of that you cannot help but get caught up in, that plays in the land. So musically, they did a great job. I'm sure this will be the same. All this music, I'm sure, will appear in the Paris land, and I'm sure will be in Fantasy Springs, and it's all absolutely perfect, right? And they did a great job the first time. Frozen Ever After, same thing. The cue music is tremendous, and that's all here as well. And so the stuff they created for Wandering Oakens is fun too. And the other thing they have, they moved the magician. There is a entertainer who's a magician at Hong Kong Disneyland, who's typically performed in Fantasyland. They've moved him. Sometimes he's in Arendelle performing, and he's, again, tailored his act, and obviously he's in costume for Arendelle too now. He's tailored his act for the land. And all of this, again, rounds out the entertainment really well, and there's constantly something going on that makes the land feel very alive and very real. This is all good. But let's talk about, this is something I've seen a lot of negative feedback on, is Wandering Oaken Sliding Sleighs, the other ride in this land. It is a family coaster, and it's very themed. It's in a mountain, and it has this really detailed queue, which what they've done, I alluded to this before when I talked about the queue for Frozen Ever After. What they did is they took the Florida queue and essentially broke it into pieces and expanded upon it. So because you're taking Wandering Oaken as the theme for the coaster, they took that Wandering Oaken portion of the Frozen Ever After queue from Florida and made it a majority of the queue here. And that's the story. The story of this attraction is that Wandering Oaken, taking advantage of the summer snow day celebration. That's the other part I haven't talked about, which I love and I think works beautifully it gives a good jumping off point for all the entertainment, all the cast members in the land. Very similar to when, Bright Suns, when they give you that greeting in Galaxy's Edge. Happy Summer Snow Day will be the thing that cast members will repeat to everybody at every venue. And it's because the story of Frozen Ever After, the story that originated with the ride in Florida, has now been expanded to the whole land. So the whole land is, you are visiting Arendelle on the day of the Summer Snow Day celebration. And so in honor of the Summer Snow Day celebration, Wandering Oaken, being the entrepreneur he is, has decided to take advantage, and he's going to build a sleigh ride, a high-capacity sleigh ride that he can charge people to ride through the Arendelle forest, through the mountainside. And this story is continued through the queue. They have all these early designs that Oaken came up with that didn't work before he arrived at the design he ended up with. And so it's a great backstory, and it actually, and the ride makes sense within the land this way. Why is there a train of sleighs? It's because Wandering Oaken decided to be creative and find a way to get as many of the guests at Arendelle through on his ride as possible. Now, the ride is short, right? It is under a minute long, this coaster. It is a mild thrill. But again, I will tell you, the Asian market, the thrill factor on something like, let's say, the Barnstormer or the Chippendale Gadget Coaster in Toontown in Anaheim, that's a much bigger thrill. Like, there are plenty of adults that will ride something of that thrill level in the Asian parks and be very content with that level of thrill. And so I regularly went on, and there were groups of guests that did not have children who very much were thrilled and had to catch their breath from riding Wandering Oaken sliding sleighs. And I know there are Americans watching this review who are probably shaking their head in disbelief at that, but that's a thing. And some people said this is a disappointment. It's not even at the level of Mine Train. Look, that would have been great if it was at the level of Mine Train, but I think they worked with the space they had. And this fulfills a need for the park that was not being fulfilled. They don't have a family coaster anywhere in this park. So they don't have a Barnstormer. So essentially, if you're going to add, if the goal is to add something, the thrill level of a Barnstormer to the park, so kids and families have a thrill ride, right? It would have been way worse to do what Disney and Universal did and have these mostly unthemed, kiddie coasters where you just see a bunch of track sitting out there, right? And Barnstormer is absolutely guilty of this, and they did a lot to fix it when they redid Barnstormer in the new Fantasyland redo, where they kind of tried to hide the track behind the billboard that Goofy crashes through and stuff, but they can only do so much. And the same at Universal with Flight of the Hippogriff. And they just keep cloning that thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's great you have this little semi-animatronic hippogriff, but it's just a bunch of black roller coaster track. This isn't an immersive ride. I can't believe all the problems J.K. Rowling has with shop sizes and things, this is deemed okay. So I think it's wonderful that Imagineering took the steps to be like, we'll have a under a minute long kid coaster, but it's going to be uber themed. It's going to go through this mountain, and it's not going to be a bunch of just exposed track. It's going to fit in with this beautiful setting that we've created, and even the beautiful setting that's beyond it with this mountainside. So I think they did a great job with it. Could it have been more? Yeah, but it fulfills a very definite need for a park that has only so many attractions. I think it's much better that they opened a land with 2 rides than 1. I think we opened so many lands with not a lot to do in them that I'm glad this happened. And then on top of it, it also is the show building for Playhouse in the Woods. So Playhouse in the Woods is going to, in some ways, fulfill the role of the meet and greet, right? People want to see Anna and Elsa and Olaf. And so how is that going to be achieved? And also, if we've built an immersive land where the characters exist for real, does the giant fursuit Olaf make sense? And the answer is he doesn't, right? So a setting where he can be the right scale and more guests can get to essentially meet Anna and Elsa is great. So the way it works now is they're doing standby pass, which is essentially virtual queue. For this, you get a return time in the app to come back, and a very short wait. You get to go in and play. The storyline is that this is somewhere that Anna and Elsa used to go play when they were kids, and it's Anna sort of behind this project to revitalize the space, and they made it a celebration of their childhood. And also some artisans in Arendelle have built these sculptures that are representative of the elemental spirits from Frozen 2. And so Anna is inviting you in. They're again, part of the Summer Snow Day. Anna and Olaf invite you in. They with your help, welcome Elsa. Elsa comes to visit. There's a little stage at the front of the room. They don't overpack the room, which is nice. But there's a little portion that happens on the stage, and then they invite you to go stand by the elemental spirit that most speaks to you. And there's 4 of them, right? And so you go stand, everyone in the room can pick one, you go stand by it. And then what will happen, Anna and Elsa will come down to the floor, get a little closer to the guests, and they'll decide that they probably have time to summon one of these spirits, and a decision is made as to which one. So there are 4 different shows which will use projection mapping technology to have and the screen technology behind Olaf on the stage to bring one of those elemental spirits to life. So I managed to see 2 of these. The wind is the wind spirit is the one you can see, or air is the one you can see here on the channel. There's also the earth with the giants, which we have available. I think I only have it in. No, I think we can put it in here. We'll share it in this video. Which is a cool effect where you see sort of these constellation version of the character go across the whole back wall, and then when they cross over into the stage portion, they're fully realized. It's very, very cool. There's nothing brand new about this, and in a lot of ways it mimics, and it makes sense. I drew this comparison, and then someone told me the same people from Disney Live Entertainment and Imagineering worked on it. It's very similar to the animation celebration, which they opened in Walt Disney Studios Paris a couple of years ago. There are some very similar moments, for sure, and the Olaf puppet, I think, is the same one. But it's a great little experience where everyone gets to get close to these characters. You don't have to wait in a line like it's a meet and greet. So you don't get a personal photo with them, but you get the opportunity to go play with these characters, to get photos with them, to get video with them. And it's this cool little interactive space for like a 12 to 15 minute show, something like that. And I think it's very well done. And I think for that market, it accomplishes, it keeps people out of a really long meet and greet line that can be several hours long, and instead gives them something that's satisfying in exchange, a satisfying experience. So the other things out on that side of town, there's just, in the woods, there's very little. Otherwise, there's 2 stands. There's a merchandise stand and a food stand. Again, go watch the food review if you want to know more about what's offered at the stand, including this very cool souvenir cup, which has Olaf with the carrot in front of Sven from Wandering Oaken Sliding Sleighs, the kind of the one indoor show scene from that. I'm going to sip from this now. But there's some cool food souvenirs, and again, the food and beverage team really knocked it out of the park, for sure. So I know we've already talked about the immersion in the land a bit, with the cast members really taking on their roles as citizens of Arendelle, all the live entertainment. The land does a very good job, like a Galaxy's Edge, keeping you in the time and in the moment and in the place. Like, they don't sell merchandise that isn't Frozen merchandise in the land. They don't sell a whole lot of food and beverage other than a Mickey premium bar at the, snack stand in the woods that takes you out of the story or out of the place. You are in Arendelle, and I really appreciate that. And then I think the idea, like something that maybe Galaxy's Edge could lean into more, like Galaxy's Edge, you're definitely there at a certain time where certain thing is happening, right? But there's only so much entertainment-wise happening in the land that builds out that story, from Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run, right? That's what I loved about Star Cruiser, was Star Cruiser delved into that, the nuances of that story that you didn't get to see in the land. Like, why is the coaxium being obtained? How does that connect to what's going on with the battle between the First Order and the Resistance? How does all this connect? And again, it's not as in-depth of a story, but the Summer Snow Day backdrop ties into everything very well and gives a story as to why you're there and what's happening. And Cars Land does something similar too, where you've been brought in to be a part of the race day. And it's a very similar backdrop and story, in that you're there for a very specific event. And I like that a lot. Look, I know, I think there's a lot of Frozen fatigue. I more have Moana fatigue at this point, and I think it's always been very hard to be mad at Frozen, because I think everything I've ever seen them do in the parks with Frozen has been top notch. The Frozen sing-along was meant to be a very temporary thing, and they did such a good job that it's still there, and it essentially eliminated a real permanent attraction to give it a permanent home at Hollywood Studios. I think about the event that was born from, the Frozen Summer Fun event at Studios, was so well done. The fireworks show was great, and there was the little parade. The animation celebration in Paris. Just every Frozen thing I've seen in the parks has been very well done. The Frozen show at DCA, God rest its soul, was a great show. And the land is the quality I expected. It is gorgeous, it's immersive, it's very, very well done. Its sheer size and scope keeps it from being in the conversation with Pandora and Cars Land and Mysterious Island and things like that. But It is. I think if you love Frozen, if your family loves Frozen, you love Frozen, whatever age you are, if those movies resonate with you, or even if you just enjoy them like me, I think I would love to hate Frozen, but every time I watch that movie, I'm just like, wow, this is a really great film. And I want to find Olaf annoying as much as other people do, and I just can't. I really like these characters, and I love the music, and I like the story. Frozen 2, not so much. Musically, I like Frozen 2, but story-wise, I have some problems. But all in all, I really love, I think other than Frozen 2, I like everything else the franchise has given us, all the shorts, the first film, etc., all the attractions. And I think everything you could possibly love about Frozen is really well captured within this land. It feels like you really get to go into the movie, and it is a great headliner attraction. It has some fun diversions in Playhouse in the Woods and the coaster. The food and beverage is really a lot of fun. The merchandise is very much in theme. Things look like they're hand knit. There's these the sun catchers. Things feel like they belong there, and all of this creates a really immersive place. The big fountain with the snowflakes, the friendship fountain, all the finishes. It's a gorgeous space, and it ticks all the boxes. It's a huge success, and another a much needed addition to Hong Kong Disneyland that needs more capacity and more to do, and makes this park even better. Look, there will be a WWNT podcast where we talk about the international parks individually, and I have so much to say about Hong Kong Disneyland and how much I love Hong Kong Disneyland. It gets sold short. Funny enough, I ran into, they had some American cast members that work in the communications and press and stuff for Disney parks. They actually flew a lot of them out for the media event and for the grand opening of the land. And one of them stopped and talked to me, and it was his first time there. And he talked about how it's no one ever talks about Hong Kong and how enamored they all were and what a good time they had. And it's a shame where people don't talk about Hong Kong and gets lost in the shuffle, because it's smaller, but it's such a charming park, right? And the thing people keep saying, and I totally agree with, is it's probably what Disneyland felt like in the late 1960s. After Disneyland added Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, had these two really great original attractions, and just as this really charming and cute and fun place, that's what Hong Kong Disneyland is. And you could spend a couple of days there, 2 or 3 days, and I think you'll have a great time. And I think this adds another really must-see thing to the lineup. I think it's a land where you'll spend a couple of hours and have a really great time. And I'm excited that it's there, because I want to see the continued success of Hong Kong Disneyland. So I'm glad they got the first land. I'm glad they have that, to show off. I'm so proud of the Walt Disney Company for finally giving this park the attention it deserves, right? Because Disney doesn't own the majority of this park. It's a joint venture with the government and the banks. And so it was so nice to see Disney's PR arm and their communications team and their advertising so focused. To see Good Morning America go there, to see every Disney social media outlet, from merchandising to parks and resorts to whatever, all the TikTok accounts and X accounts, Twitter, to see all of this coverage and attention given to Hong Kong was so refreshing. To see that the company actually sees a future there and was like, we've built this thing we're really proud of, and we want you to, hey, everybody, you should know that this park exists, and it's great. It really put a smile on my face. I'm so happy to see all this attention and love go to this park. But I think Frozen, World of Frozen is great. I somewhat worry about the Paris equivalent, and I do still believe their expansion needs to be so much more than what is already announced, especially with the Star Wars land no longer happening. We'll talk about that in a separate video. I'm sure at some point that will be discussed. Don't get me wrong, Frozen Ever After will be a great addition to Paris, to Walt Disney Studios, but I don't think it's the end of what's needed to fix that park, for sure. But it's a great land. It's really immersive, and just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and it felt very Disney and of a high quality. And what I hope You know, Disney is going, Imagineering and Josh D'Amaro going on and on about how much future they see in the parks, and they're going to spend this $60 billion on the parks and resorts to grow them. If this is the quality level that we're going to see consistently in the post-Chapek era, I'm on board. If this is the quality level we can keep things coming in at, even if it's all IP, which is not really completely what I want. I would like to see some original stuff in all of this, but we did. Adventureland Treehouse just happened, so some of that's happening, but on a larger scale, I'd love to see more. But if everything's going to be at this quality level, then I say bring it. More where this came from, please. So that's my honest review of the World of Frozen. If you want to watch more of our honest reviews, they're right here on the channel. Please check them out. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and please subscribe for more. And I think with that, we're going to let it go. Had to be said. I'm sorry. I apologize, but it had to be done. I'll go now.